Dear friends, I am Dr. Urmi Satyan from School of Liberal Studies, Pandit Deen Dayal Petroleum University. The topic for today's discussion is literature and science with reference to the novel Brave New World. Aldous Leonard Huxley, the author of Brave New World, was born in 1894, very close to the start of a new century. In a way, we can say that Huxley is a product of the society that bears testimony to the transitional phase of moving from Victorian to modern period. Though both these centuries focus on the projection of realism, their tools vary. The Victorians show realism through society and the modern writers through science. The Victorian literature focuses more on natural landscape vis-a-vis industrialization that affected the life of the working class. Contrary to that, the modern literature of the 20th century breaks away from nature and natural matters. This new literary zeal presents the harsh realities associated with a blind pursuit of science. Huxley hails from an educated family. His father, Leonard Huxley, was a school teacher and a literary figure. His grandfather, Thomas Henry Huxley, was a biologist who worked with Darwin. Huxley was also the grandnephew of the famous literary figure Matthew Arnold. Huxley himself was an English literature graduate. He developed interest in Indian philosophy and in 1941 he got associated with Vedanta, a society founded to study Indian philosophy. Huxley developed wide and deep interest in Indian philosophy and translated Bhagavad Gita in collaboration with his guru and a fellow disciple. Brave New World is published in 1932. London in the 1930s was passing from a terrible time of Great Depression. Conservative Party got political power. There grew a noticeable bent towards consumerism. The English society of this time stood mainly on the market-controlled economic structure. The normal, simple or ordinary life was under an uncertain threat. As a result, people started compromising with the basic tendencies of human nature. In addition, class demarcation was also the prominent issue of the time. Brave New World is written in the backdrop of this society where complacency is the nature and selfishness is the culture of the people. Friends, it will not be wrong to say that Brave New World is a dystopian novel, a novel that shows a bleak picture of a world that is ideal but dangerous, a world that will be insensitive and stable, a world where life is controlled by the power of science. Huxley's Brave New World presents a fictional world state that is situated in London. It is a huge 34-story building known as the Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre. The motto of this world state is community, stability and identity. Mustafa Mon is the controller of this world state and Tomakin is the D@C, director of the hatchery and the conditioning center. The novel begins with an introduction to bottling plants in a fertilizing center. About the fertilizing center, the director Tomakin says, one embryo, one egg and one adult is normality. He directs to Bokanovskify, that is to geometrically multiply the embryo for the mass and speedy production of the test tube babies. This brave and new world has a structural hierarchy classified as the alphas at the top, followed by beta, gamma, delta and epsilon. In this fertilizing center, the toddlers are given hypnopaedic lessons. Electric shocks are given to restrict them from developing any appreciation for natural scenes or sights. Licentiousness is considered as a virtue. At the Department of Writing, they study and teach emotional engineering, where slogans and hypnopaedic rhymes are being taught. One such slogan is, "Ending is better than mending." Slogans are repeated frequently to create lasting impression. All in all, it is a kind of systematic and forced controlling and conditioning. The only relief that the world state members can have is from the intoxicating drink of soma. Mustafa Mon bans history, religion, and literature from the education system. The emotional people are sent to the savage reservation, a place reserved for savages, mostly Indians. John, the biological child of the DHC, and Linda is ordered to live in exile in this savage reservation. World state is considered as the place of civilized people. The savage reservation is a place where Indians live who are humane and so uncivilized. John lives with such Indians. He reads Shakespearean plays and tries to compare the Elizabethan society to that of the world state. Elizabethan society was the nest of singing birds, as we all know, whereas world state prohibits any such activity that is related to art or aesthetics. Three more characters are important in this novel. They are Bernard Marx, Watson Helmholtz, and Lenina Crow. Bernard and Watson are from the alpha class, whereas Lenina is from beta. Bernard is a sleep learning specialist, Watson is a professor in emotional engineering, and Lenina is expert in vaccination work. One thing surprises us that despite being alpha, Bernard and Watson are dissatisfied with their lives. Once, Bernard and Lenina go to the savage reservation where they happen to meet John, the only human child in the novel. On meeting John, they come to know that John is the child of the DHC and Linda, a beta produce. Bernard and Lenina bring John to the world state, but John becomes an object to laugh at for his human qualities. John feels disgusted to see the functioning system of the world state. He is embittered at heart and very ironically says what kind of a brave new world it is. John, who reads Shakespearean drama a lot, borrows these words from Miranda, a female protagonist in Tempest. John remembers how innocently Miranda mistook the troop of island invaders as the godly creatures and exclaimed, "How beauteous mankind is! O brave new world that has such people in it!" John says Miranda was proclaiming the possibility of loveliness, the possibility of transforming even the nightmare into something fine and noble. O brave new world! It was a challenge, a command. With Miranda's reference, John draws our attention to the helplessness of a sensible person in the middle of extreme standards set by the power controllers. John does not find anything that is brave or new in the world state. He finds it as a place full of miseries and mechanisms. His mother's death destroys him totally. He retreats to a remote lighthouse. When Bernard, Watson, and Lenina reach there, they see John vomiting. Watson asks him whether he has eaten anything wrong. He says, "I have eaten civilization. I have eaten my own wickedness." These words show his contempt and repulsion for the world state. Frustrated and hurt, John whips Lenina for being the seducer, and then he whips himself to death. Mustafa banishes Bernard and Watson to a remote island on finding their inability and also unwillingness in carrying out the assignment given by him. Thus, the world state is doomed at the end of the novel. This mad pursuit of science reminds Samuel Johnson's essay from Idler. Johnson writes, When the philosophers of the last age were first congregated into the Royal Society, great expectations were raised of the sudden progress of useful arts. The time was supposed to be near when engines should turn by a perpetual motion and health be secured by the universal medicine. Johnson then says, but improvement is naturally slow. The society met and parted without any visible diminution of the miseries of life. The gout and stone were still painful. The ground that was not ploughed brought no harvest, and neither oranges nor grapes would grow upon the hawthorn. Huxley's futuristic novel Brave New World presents a fictional world that has no nexus with the human civilization. The sleep lessons and electric shocks given to Delta infants infuse in them a systematic repulsion for nature and natural way of life. This education system takes us to Jonathan Swift's math lover Laputan King, who directs his students to write the mathematical proportions and demonstrations on thin wafers and eat these wafers for the easy and rapid memorizing of the prescribed formulas. Friends, the main purpose of Huxley and Swift is to satirize the totalitarian and power-blinded rulers who despise notions of humanity and humility. The adjectives brave and new both are proved wrong for the world state. John could not digest this civilization and pukes it out mentally as well as physically. He cures himself by swallowing mustard seeds and warm water. By introducing the herbal medicine to cure John's illness, Huxley perhaps advises that to make this world brave and new in a true sense, nature should be respected first. I would conclude by stating that the early 20th century has witnessed almost an outbreak in science inventions. The time of the 1920s is characterized as a time of lost generation. Europe was much ahead of the rest of the world in the 1930s. This was the most developed continent, but the materialistic development became a threat to the human civilization. The literary artist like Huxley could perceive a lingering fright over human culture and warn the world against the devastation to be caused due to the disrespect towards nature and natural laws. In the present COVID-19 pandemic, we can clearly experience how a virus can put the world on standstill position. Is it the progress of science or the blind pursuit of it? We know it better. Thank you very much.